on values and vision, in fact, thinking what frustrates you and what you're unwilling to accept is a really powerful place to start.
Hello and welcome to Brand Tuned, a podcast on brand management that covers trademarks and IP as they're intrinsic to brand equity. I'm your host, Shireen Smith, author of Brand Tuned. Writing this led to Byron Sharp's evidence-based research stressing distinctiveness over differentiation, which I largely agree with, though not totally. Hence our tagline, Sharp Branding. Chet Morjaria is the founder of Realign Global, a business that provides coaching to entrepreneurs who want to align their offerings and marketing to their values. He has a master's degree in management from St. Andrews University, and his past roles have included managing editor for a health and fitness website, where he managed 6 editors and 200 writers to create daily content. He recently published the book, Work Worth Doing, which is about aligning your value with your values to make a meaningful mark on the world. Welcome to the Brand Tuned podcast, Chet.
Thank you so much for having me on, Shireen. It's an absolute pleasure.
Great. So when I first started my business and was having some designs developed for me, I really didn't have a clue what the designers meant when they said, you know, what are your values? Values about what, I wondered. So I think a good starting point is to ask you to define values, because I know you've written this book recently, which I just mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. What a great question and what a great starting point. And I read about this journey too, Shireen, in your blog post. I think it was around 2005 when you were having these discussions. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, a long time ago.
Yeah. So values to me, and exactly as I've written in the book, are the essence of what it is to be human, of what it is to be ourselves. And values are many things, really. Values are a grounding for our beliefs. They are boundaries for our behaviors. They are often things, concepts that they often come from, I find, when you are looking to create your values, looking to understand what your values are. They often come from looking at your behaviors in previous times and things that maybe you weren't particularly good at, weren't particularly great at, things that you look back at and dislike about yourself actually these days. And therefore it gives you an even stronger focus to be better at these things, to integrate these things, to teach and coach these things, and to have them in your business. So fundamentally, values are a very human piece. And I'm sure we're going to get into this a little bit, but that's where I find business owners initially can get mixed up, that they think that values need to pertain to a specific business or a specific industry, whereas actually they are our grounding as human beings.
There are so many things that define us as people, though. So how do you, and I assume you have to whittle down the values to the most important ones, is that right?
Yeah, it's definitely a good practice, because, so let's talk to the whittling down of values. Why do we need to have a small set of values? Let's say 3 to 4 values, for example, as opposed to 10 to 15 values, because what we want values to be is we want them to be practical, not just to be words on a page. And by practical, I mean, we want them to inform how we behave, how we react, how we make decisions, how we communicate on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, we're not programmed to to be able to remember 12 to 15 things and to check ourselves against that at all these opportunities. And so actually, in terms of practicality, which is really important, I think, when it comes to values, having closer to 3 to 4 values, whittling them down to the most important things, and I'll be happy to go through a process of how to do that. Whittling them down enables us to then step into them, to lean into these values and to have them as meaningful, literally meaningful pieces that inform our everyday actions.
Sure, it would be great to understand how to work out which are the most significant values. I mean, in your book that I've read thoroughly, you say maybe start by considering what behaviors frustrate you in others. What do you think is wrong with modern society? Can you talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So, on values and vision, in fact, thinking what frustrates you and what you're unwilling to accept is a really powerful place to start. Words to live by in the book, it's on page 67 for anyone that does have it. Words to live by is this piece that you're talking about, Shireen, and I call it the anti-values exercise, colloquially. And this comes from years and years of helping individuals, helping businesses, or I should say humans within businesses, understand their values and using multitude of different exercises to help them do that. And coming to the realization that one of the quickest and most powerful is this piece, because as you mentioned right at the beginning, your very first question, Shireen, it's often really difficult when someone asks you a question like, what do you stand for? What do you believe in? What's important to you? It's difficult to figure that out. But if someone asks you, funnily enough, if someone says, look, what annoys you? What outrages you? What do you stand up for in public? What actually gives you that visceral reaction that I need to do something here? What makes you feel uncomfortable? What gives you discomfort? What winds you up, basically, is the question. That seems to be a lot easier. We seem to be able to connect with those ideas a lot more vividly and a lot more tangibly, if that's a word. And so we use that. I leverage that to help us to figure out what our values, our positive values are. And it may seem strange starting with this kind of negative piece around anti-values, but it's simply a thought experiment. It's a means to an end to come up with the values. So let's wrap up the conversation so far with how it works, how this exercise works, and how you can use it to whittle your values down. Would that be valuable?
Would you first write out all your values and all the things you don't like?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the first place to start. Step one is you're not even thinking about values at this point. You're simply thinking of scenarios. You're thinking of situations, because we have to ground our values for them not to be words on a page. And we really don't want them to be words on a page. It's a waste of time, energy, perhaps money if you're employing someone else to help you with these things. We want them to be valuable and we want them to be meaningful. So grounding them in terms of visceral scenarios and situations, things that annoy or upset or outrage you, especially in relation to the behavior of other humans, because these are humanistic pieces, as we said. These are the things that if you see something that goes against, these are the situations where you feel compelled to say something. If you don't say something, you feel that you should have said something. So actually, what you're creating in this first step, when you look down that list, you should see a list of your nightmares. You should see a list of almost your worst type of human being, the type of person who you would metaphorically or literally cross the road for. And understanding that, understanding who you are not, what really winds you up, what frustrates you, is a quickened, powerful pathway to getting to these words. So how do we start taking those scenarios into words? Step two then is to start thinking about the words, but still not the values. It's the negative behaviors. So, for example, if you've thought of a situation where you've thought of a few situations that frustrate you, and that what links them is when people think that life, their parents, their employers, or anyone owes them something, you might summarize that as entitlement. So, entitlement would be an example of an anti value. So, now you're taking these scenarios and you're putting them into specific words. Then, what we can do is take each of these anti values, so these words like entitlement, and find a word or a short phrase that's the opposite, but not the dictionary definition opposite, more the opposite as it refers to you. So, for example, for me, responsibility is one of my human values. And the opposite of entitlement for me is not the dictionary definition, for example, restriction or disadvantage, but it's something more akin to responsibility or humility. And for me, responsibility would be where it sits. So step one, we've thought of the scenario. Step two, we've got the anti-value word. Step three, we've got the value words. And then the last piece, just to wrap it all together and to whittle it down, as you said, would be take your list of values from step three and combine any words with similar meanings. So you might have responsibility and humility, or you might have responsibility and ownership. And those final words might be one of the words that you already have on the page, or they might be a new word that takes and combines the meanings of the existing words. And when you get to that step four, you should pretty much have a list of your values.
I mean, for example, I'll tell you, one of the things that really annoys me is when people don't have a sense of boundaries. So, for example, we're all supposed to say a few words, 3-4 minutes as presentations, and one of the speakers speaks for 10-12 minutes. And that really makes me seethe that they're not sort of respecting that boundary. Or people who say, oh, can I just have a word with you about something? And, they don't respect that actually they're not even a friend of mine. And, I've got things to do. And I've already had a word with them, say, about a service they want to buy. So that annoys me as well. But so how would you then articulate this sort of sense that somebody doesn't have boundaries into a value?
I love this, a real-time case study. So you mentioned a word there 2 or 3 times, Shireen, which was respect.
Yeah. Okay.
And so my ears pricked up when you said that, but let's take it back a step. So we might end up with a value of respect, but let's actually go through the process. Boundaries can bring into play so many of our values. Respect seems to be the one that you're leaning to. So let me ask you, when someone does that, when you encounter those scenarios that you just mentioned, do you feel then that other human is being disrespectful to you, to your time, to the others in the room?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So how else might somebody experience that sort of lack of boundaries? You say for me it's respect. Are there other ways that?
Yeah. So another example might be trust, for example. Another example might be around responsibility.
Right.
So taking ownership and responsibility. And actually those, if those are your values, or some of those are your values, they might all manifest in this situation, but your language gave you away a little bit there, I think, where you mentioned the idea of respect a few times. And often it's actually through chatting through this stuff, through explaining, a good question to ask ourselves, or if you're doing this in a group, would be, well, what do you mean by that? Or give me another example. And often you'll find that these anti-value words start to emerge, and right. it seems they have for you. And so a good way to do that is to continue the process then, Shireen. So to say, okay, so if the boundaries piece there is housed in disrespect, let's continue to play that through then. So when we talk about respect, is that something that you can then, is that something that, that that the disrespect respect conundrum, is that something you see play out in other examples, in other scenarios in your life and in your business?
Well, it's not actually one of the top values I've articulated in the business. So it just goes to show, well, me, that how difficult it is to decide which values you're going to settle on out of all the ones that could emerge for your business, you know.
And I think, just as a caveat, what we did here was to take one example, one scenario, and do a small case study on it. If we were to go through this from top to tail and be sure that the anti-values and the values that we're ending up with are the right ones, then I would urge you, and I would urge anyone doing this, Shireen, to go through the list. So go through each step and be quite comprehensive. So go through as many scenarios as you can think of, because then we will see some of these anti-values repeat themselves, and that's how we'll be able to pull through the right ones. And then, of course, when you get to the other side, you can stress test the values against you as a human being, and then also as against your business or your idea for a business. And that's useful as well, because like you say, even when you have a list, how do you know if they're actually your values?
Yeah, it sounds almost like you need therapy for it. So how do you work with people to go through their values? Roughly what's involved in terms of timescales to work out what their top 3 or 4 values are?
Good question. So values and vocation and vision are the 3 pieces that I do with my clients on day 1 of the Business with Meaning Accelerator. And the reason for the Business with Meaning Accelerator is exactly what we've spoken about. It's that the meaning, the stuff that's important to us as human beings, if we want to be fulfilled, which is, I know, something that you speak about a lot, if we want to do work that's valuable, if we want to be valued, if we want work that's in line with our values, then we need to start that whole process with understanding what they are, of course. So unsurprisingly, day 1 and step 1 of creating a business with meaning is meaning itself. In terms of timeframes, then we actually uncover or discover, however you want to say it, your values and your vocation and your vision in a single day, so in a 6-hour time frame. And the reason that that's possible, and it's possible in a small group, in fact, is first of all years of experience, but then taking that experience and breaking it down into these step-by-step processes. And just to say as well that the exact exercises that I use with my clients on the accelerator are the very same exercises that exist in the Work Worth Doing book.
I mean, some people are really lucky in knowing what they want to do with their lives because their values are so clear to them. For example, Greta Thunberg. So I wonder if the rest of us who might be struggling to articulate our values, what else we can do to speed up our thinking. I mean, I have my vision and all that sorted, but knowing which values are really the top 3 has always been something I've struggled with. If you've done some of your thinking and you've got a whole, say, 8 or 9 or 10 values that are really important to you, what else can you do to actually decide which should be your top 3 or 4? I mean, do you just go with it and then see how it feels and maybe change it? How would you?
Good question. So if we're looking to distill a set of, let's say, 10 or 12 values down to maybe 3 or 4 values, the first principle maybe to embrace is that actually, although we define our values don't define us to the point where they are where they have to just be the be all and end all, where the values that we settle on are the values that have to be our values for all of eternity. Our values are formed through our understanding and reflection on our experience and our experiences. And of course, that develops too. So our understanding will develop and our values may sharpen or may change or tweak as a result. So probably the first piece is to give ourselves permission to create a small set of values, knowing that they are stable, but they're not static. They can change, and that's okay. In terms of more practical ways to whittle them down, you might ask yourself some of the following questions. So these are stress tests, and once you have your list of values, these may help. So you might think of asking yourself how proud you are of these values. Which values are you most proud of? Which values would your parents be most proud of? Which values do you feel you represented before you even knew they were your values? So you can track them back. You can think of specific moments, specific scenarios in which you stood up for these values in an anti-value situation, in which you're able to frame how important they were to you. You can think of moments when you represented them. You would stand up for these values in public. You would stand up for them even if no one was watching. You would stand up for them if they made you unpopular. And you would, if you were introducing yourself to someone, so here's one that's not in the book, but that I often use. If you were introducing yourself to someone that you didn't know and who was important to you, an important connection, you could introduce yourself through these 3 or 4 words, these 3 or 4 values, and feel like they have a strong sense of who you are as a human being. So in terms of human values, that those are some ideas. And then you can look at the same concept of stress testing your values against your business or your business ideas. So you can look at questions like, if you were going to start a new business, which of these values would you build it around, regardless of the business, regardless of the offerings? Which of these values would you refuse to recruit someone who didn't share them, regardless of their ability? Which of these values would you hold true to, even if they became a competitive disadvantage, or even if they meant less profit? Now, as you've written about too, Shireen, these shouldn't happen, because if you build a business in line with your values and you do that meaningfully and powerfully, actually there's tons of research to show that a business with meaning, like you've said, is a business with increased productivity, increased efficiency, increased connection, increased profitability, and all that stuff. But they are useful thought experiments. So stress testing, and then keeping the ones in that really tick most of those questions, that hit most of those answers, is probably one good way of doing it.
So people's values can change with the passage of time. Would you then write out a sentence to articulate your values rather than just a word?
100%. So I call those value statements. Super important, I think, to have us understand what our own values mean to us, to ourselves, and also for others to understand what these words mean to us. And actually those sentences as well, make them directives. So make them very actionable. For example, if you had honesty as one of your values, your value statement might be, do the right thing regardless of consequence.
Well, I do actually believe that, really do.
Great, me too. And honesty is one of my 3. So honesty, respect, and responsibility are my 3 values. And so as a human being, and so those value statements serve as a really simple reminder to us of what it actually means and how to personify, how to live out these values in ourselves and in our work.
That's absolutely great, yes. So just for the benefit of listeners, if they were interested in your accelerator, how long is it? You said the first day focuses on this. What else is involved in it?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So it's a 3-month accelerator, and there are 6 components within it. And this all stems from a strong, an unwillingness to accept, let's say, an unwillingness to accept that purpose, that values, that mission and vision are things that are simply words on a page. And that's how I have seen them exist for many years and in many businesses. And the idea that actually doing something, doing work that's in line with your values, having communication that is in line with your values at the opposite end of the spectrum to being effective and profitable. And of course, it's not. And so the Business with Meaning Accelerator is a way to put all those things together, because how I identify a business with meaning and define that is a business that is aligned with your true values, that gives your customers deep value, and that takes you to being emotionally and financially valued. So there's six pieces across this framework, 6M. So the first one is meaning. Mm-hmm. Once you understand your values, your vocation, your vision, then you can move to market. So market is then understanding who your target market is. And it's kind of similar to meaning in that we're not talking about, you don't choose your values. In a way, your values choose you. You don't choose your vocation chooses you. And it's the same with your niche or your target market or whatever you want to call it, that actually that is something that is already who you work best with, who you have the most impact with, who you can help the most, which is some questions you might ask around target market, are people who already exist in your network. They're people who have already exist in your experience and people who you've already had impact with. And it's a case of uncovering those. Following that, we move to mission. So this elusive piece of mission, or the mission statement, and that is the matching piece to market. So once you have the who can I help most powerfully, who do I help best, the mission piece is the how do I do that? So how do I do my best work? And when you put those together, you can answer the question, how do I do my best work with those who need it the most? And that is a really powerful piece on which to build any business. And then we can do the build stuff. So then we can go into the methodology. What is your methodology? Because your methodology comes from being able to serve the deep needs of your market through your mission. Then we can move on to the business model, which is where many people start. And we can move on to what are the products? What's the packaging? What's the pricing? And then finally, we can move on to marketing and the communication and the words around your work. But the marketing can only come when you have your offering, and your offering can only come when you have an understanding of your meaning and your market and your mission. So that's how the Business with Meaning Accelerator works.
They're all intertwined. So that would basically, my framework is called Tuned for developing your brand. Think IP first is the start, but what you do covers the whole understand your market, which is the second element. Then the third is name it right and establish your brand strategy and drive your strategy. So it could work quite well for people to go to you. Is it just you teaching it, or have you got various mentors?
At this point, at time of recording, it's me who does the service delivery, but that may well change in the next 12 months.
Great, interesting. Yeah, you certainly have an interesting background in words and doing content marketing, so I'm sure it could be really valuable for people going through your accelerator. I like to ask guests to recommend up to 3 books to develop and grow a business and brand. Chet, which would you suggest? As I know you must have read a lot of books in your role as, in the past you were an editor, weren't you?
Overall. That's right. Yeah. Was ex-managing editor. I'm ex-managing editor of Breaking Muscle, which was a health and fitness website, and we had 8 million monthly visitors, 8 editors, 200 writers. So like you say, in terms of aligning a business, its people, its communications to a common goal, then that's definitely been true for many roles and in many years. And totally, I love books. I'm sitting surrounded by multiple bookshelves as we speak. So three books as you requested. So I think it would be remiss not to mention our co-mentor, or someone who mentors us both, at least, Daniel Priestley.
Sure, yes. Which of his books would you?
Well, yeah, good question. Key Person of Influence, I guess, is his key book, his first book, I believe, and his Accelerator. So that was the piece that introduced me to Daniel. So if we're talking about growing and building a business, then I would say that's a cornerstone read. And also will help people to start to wrap their heads around the differences, that the relationship between a human being, an entrepreneur, and the business, which I think is a really powerful thing to explore. The second book, if I can be so bold, is my book, Work Worth Doing.
Yes,
and
yeah.
And the reason that I'm saying that is not just because it's my book, but because I wrote this book partially out of a frustration with the lack of a practical, short, simple, practical book in terms of values and vision, and how to, first of all, to understand what these things are, second of all, to create them, and then third of all, and importantly, to actually integrate this into the fabric of your work and your words. And hopefully I've written that. So that's why I'd recommend that piece. And the last book I'd recommend is a bit of a curveball, but it's Deep Work by Cal Newport. And the reason that I'm recommending that is because I think it's easy to get carried away with, especially as from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's easy to get carried away with continually pushing forward, with filling up our time, with progress, with profitability, with growth. And of course, these are all important things, but they can also be overwhelming things. And this is where Work Worth Doing comes from as well, in terms of understanding the work that is truly fun and freeing and fulfilling and financially rewarding. And I found that one of the hardest things to do as an entrepreneur is find the time and create the space for this work worth doing. And Cal Newport's book around deep work has been absolutely pivotal for me, and I know for many colleagues and clients as well, when it comes to not fighting against ourselves, which is another big battle I think we face as entrepreneurs a lot of the time, and to actually create the time and space to make meaningful decisions, to do the work that's worth doing, and to be able to focus on the stuff that really matters to us and to our business.
That's great. And have you learnt a couple of lessons that during your time in business that you pass on to a best friend or your child?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of things which really stand out. And actually, I was really blessed with. So I have two sons, Hilton and Lawrence, and they both read the book, which was a blessing in itself. They're both teenagers and 20-somethings now, so
really?
Very happy for them.
Well, it's a very readable book, really.
Thank you, and they found it too, which was really nice. And Hilton said to me, so he is 23 now, and he said to me that even though he's just starting out, so he's just finishing his master's in civil engineering, and he's just starting out on the career ladder. And he said that even though it's not, most of it maybe is not directly applicable to what he is, his stage in life, he's still got a lot from it. And Lawrence said that, which is the piece that I'm about to move into, Lawrence said what he read in the book felt like what I've instilled in him from when he was tiny, which was just such a beautiful thing for him to say, and a really warming thing for me to hear. And so when we're talking about advice that you give to your friend or your best friend or your children, well, hopefully the book is that. And two of the big pieces that are part of the book, but also part of my psyche, are these two things. The thing that we need help with the most is the thing that we help others with the most, is one big piece that always comes back at me, and always is something that I often end up talking to clients and friends and colleagues about, the thing that we need help with the most is the thing that we help others with the most. To me, that means two things. It means that it's okay to seek help, to seek coaches and mentors with the very thing that we do, whether that is in terms of industry, whether that is in terms of superpower or vocation. The thing that we're best at, actually, that's the thing that we need coaching in the most. We need what we teach often. And the flip side,
that's what draws us to it.
Absolutely. And exactly as you say, and the flip side to that, or the reverse of the coin, the heads and tails of that coin, is that actually it's the thing that we help others with the most, the thing that we help our clients with the most, is the thing that we actually struggle with. And it's because, and this is to me where imposter syndrome comes from, and it's because it's our eternal battle. Like you say, it's because we're drawn to it, because we're always trying to figure this stuff out. Our brains are eternally switched on to figuring out these pieces for ourselves. And we've done so much of that we're a couple of steps ahead of our clients, a couple of levels ahead. And that it's because of the fact that actually the thing that we need help with the most is the thing we help others with the most, that enables us to help our clients, as opposed to despite that, which is what many people think.
Well, that's a very perceptive point to make. I think it's so essential, really, to know what your values are, for example, in order to chase the right dreams. Otherwise, you could go after the wrong thing for you. That's why I like to focus on this whole area of branding.
You're so right, Shireen. I totally agree. When you understand your values, and especially when you pair them with the other pieces surrounding purpose, when you pair them with vision, and when you pair them with mission or vocation, you get a real sense of, you can really narrow down the opportunities. And when inbound opportunities come in, if you're lucky enough to have them come in, then you can very quickly and simply place them. You can say, well, actually, are these really in line with my values, my vocation, my vision? Are they really removed, or are they somewhere in between? And it's so much easier to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah, very, very insightful. Thank you very much indeed, Chet, for appearing on the podcast.
Absolutely my pleasure, Shireen. Thank you for having me on. It's been lovely talking with you.
That's it for this week. Do subscribe to the Brand Tuned newsletter to get weekly updates. I'd also love to get your feedback. Just send me an email to info@brandtune.com. Finally, if you liked the episode, please do share it with your friends and colleagues and review it on iTunes or whichever platform you use to listen to podcasts. If you leave us a 5-star review, it means more people will listen and we can spread the word much more quickly about the podcast. Thank you, and bye for now.